We're thrilled to have Lisa DiBerardino with us today from AQuity, the Health Documentation Service Manager. Lisa's here to answer some questions. We're navigating the Virtual Scribe landscape, roles, selections, qualities, transitions into this particular role. And we thought that we would ask her a number of questions. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Right off the bat, Lisa, can you explain to us or describe the typical day-to-day responsibilities of a virtual scribe at your company?
Sure. The virtual medical scribe is a fairly new position that we're navigating here at AQuity. When I say new, we've had transcription services for 25 years. The scribing services we've had in place for 3 or 4 years. The virtual medical scribe is available to virtually assist their physician through clinic visits. They provide support as the physicians see their patients. Most importantly, handling the documentation for the medical record that resides on the patient medical record, the SOAP note typically. The scribe, as they start their day, they're doing some chart readiness, which includes gathering any outstanding blood work, imaging, etc., anything that the physician would need at their fingertips to have it ready for the encounter with the patient. So basically, they're typically getting an electronic medical chart ready prior to the patient being seen, and then documenting the visit with the patient in the electronic health record. That's kind of a high overview of what they do each day. Did you want to just notate all the questions, Sarah, or would you like me to go through them myself?
What we can do is just going to bring up the chat here. Okay. I can notate them and then we can go over them later if that's okay.
That's perfect. Yeah.
Good. Okay. Excellent. All right. I'm just sorry about this, guys. There we go. Okay. So Lisa, how would that differ from an MT's role? So what is the difference between a virtual scribe and an MT?
Right. So there is a difference. Anyone who's worked as a medical transcriptionist understands that their role is, listening to the spoken word verbatim and transcribing the medical record as the physician specifies. In the scribing role, the scribe has to be in tune to the entire lay conversation between the physician and patient. So basically, they are listening into the encounter. So for instance, high level, a patient may be coming in to see a cardiologist for the first time after they've been discharged from hospital. And so, as we all know, when we go into a physician's office, we typically have a face-to-face encounter with the patient or with the physician. Basically, the physician will say, "Hello, Mrs. Smith, how are you feeling? How have you been since we last saw you? And Happy New Year," that sort of thing. That's where the initial discussion comes into play. And then, of course, all the other information that follows would be the subjective portion. The physician might ask Mrs. Smith, how have you been feeling since you were discharged? Have you had any shortness of breath, any tightness in your chest? Did you have that blood work done that I gave you at the time of discharge? And so the scribe is listening into this encounter through a small, it almost looks like an Alexa speaker that's sitting on the physician's desk. And so the scribe is listening into this lay conversation between physician and patient and picking out the bits and pieces of relevant information that are going to make up the SOAP note, subjective, objective assessment and plan. And that typically is a progress note that's sitting on the EMR. So the scribe might start out under subjective. Patient returns to the office 1 month post-discharge for myocardial infarction. The patient denies any chest pain or shortness of breath. The patient continues on the medications that were provided at the time of discharge and has no complaints at this time. So that's typically what a subjective portion of a report looks like. And then the the physician and patient move into the objective portion, which of course is the physical exam, and there might be a blood pressure reading, there might be pulse, listening to the chest, that sort of thing. All that's recorded under the objective portion. So rather than transcribing verbatim like a transcriptionist would, the scribe is listening in with their critical listening skills, critical thinking skills, listening and gathering all the relevant information and putting it together in that SOAP note that's so that the physician doesn't have to do that at the end of their day. That's basically the difference.
Oh, that's very interesting. So, when you're working as a virtual scribe, are you always following the same doctor?
Yes, you are. It's a one-to-one match. We occasionally have two physicians to one scribe, but typically it's one-to-one. We have a few occasions where there might be two physicians who are covering an emergency room shift. So then a scribe might be working with two different physicians, but typically it's a one-to-one match.
So, how would that work in terms of holidays? So, I'm following or I'm working with a specific doctor. Am I taking my holidays and working my shifts around whatever he or she is doing?
Not necessarily. And something that comes into play here is these physicians that we're providing scribing services for are US based now. So they live and work in the United States. And if a physician works on a Canadian stat holiday, our scribes can opt to work that shift with holiday pay, or they find another scribe to take that shift on for them. When we talk about the physicians taking a week's holiday, the scribe can do the same. They can opt to take their holidays at the same time, or they can opt to pick up shifts for another physician.
Okay, interesting. So, what qualifications and skills are essential for a successful virtual scribe?
So much like transcription, we're looking for individuals who have a passion for healthcare, seeking a clinical exposure, working and supporting a physician during their daily encounters. Successful candidates typically have a minimum of 1 to 2 years to dedicate to this position. They possess strong medical language skills, terminology skills, past experience in a medical setting, working with a physician. That's important too. A lot of people kind of get nervous about that. And then equivalent training through an accredited virtual medical scribing program, much like CanScribe offers. We see individuals come from all walks of life. So, typically the attributes that we're looking for: critical thinking skills, excellence in communication skills and written skills, the ability to work independently and part of a team. That goes without saying. All of our scribes work virtually from home, but they are an integral part of the physician's team on the documentation side. Another attribute: multitasking abilities in a fast-paced environment. As I mentioned, the physicians that we provide scribing services for, they live and work in the United States, and typically they see more patients per day than their Canadian counterparts, mostly due to the fact we have different healthcare systems. So working with a physician, they could be seeing 25, 30, 35 patients a day and staying on task with those physicians, helping them, supporting them through that busy clinic pace. And then, of course, the strong medical terminology knowledge base with a background in human anatomy and pathophysiology is important. Some of the requirements that we look for: all of our scribes have to be hold a current Canadian social insurance number and be eligible to work in Canada. They must be a resident of Canada, living and working within the Canadian border. Proficient, as I said, with medical terminology, self-motivated to work from home, that's important. Reliable high-speed internet is a requirement. You must have a HIPAA compliant home office space, which means 4 walls and a door, much like transcription. We are very cognizant of personal health information and the privacy and security that surrounds it. So all of our scribes have to be working in a dedicated office space. That means 4 walls and a door. There's no other people, no pets present, and it's not in a common living area. And then we want to know if you have specific experience with a specialty. The physicians that we provide scribing services for, they come from all specialties and subspecialties. So as a scribe, they could be matched with a cardiologist, an orthopedic surgeon, pediatrics, the list goes on and on. So we need to know that whoever we bring on has that strong medical language knowledge base. And if they have a background in a specific specialty, we like to know about that too. First and foremost, we match by availability. But certainly if we have somebody who is very experienced in cardiology and we have a cardiologist looking for a scribe, that to us makes perfect sense.
Excellent. So if we have a number of people are here today that are medical transcriptionists, what is the process for transitioning over to a virtual scribe role?
That's a really good question. And actually, we've brought on some recent graduates from the medical transcription program at CanScribe into the virtual scribe position. So because the MTs have the required terminology background that's essential to this position, they transition very well into this position. We do provide training on how to function specifically as a scribe. But I do want to just point out that transcription and scribing, as I mentioned earlier, are very different functions. Again, transcription is transcribing the spoken word, whereas scribing requires that the individual listen carefully to the encounter between physician and patient, and using their skills adopted in training and their past experience, be able to pick the important pieces of the lay conversation and create that subjective, objective assessment and plan fields of the SOAP note. I also want to mention that with transcriptionists who have been transcribing for a long time, which is something I did, you know, we've got transcriptionists who've successfully transitioned into the scribe position who've been transcribing for 15, 20 years. Again, they're very skilled in medical language. They have that going for them 100%. What I will say is that transcriptionists develop a very strong muscle memory for transcription-based work. So it can take some time to kind of transition over to the new way of working, but absolutely, you're given the tools you need to fully function as a scribe. And even though it is a bit of a change from transcription, we know that transcriptionists have what we need in order to be a successful scribe.
Excellent. So when they join your firm as a virtual scribe, is there training that you provide at AQuity for them?
Yes, for sure. We have a very rigorous training program through our Virtual Scribe Academy. And they have a very intensive 3-week training session, Monday through Friday, 9 to 6. It's not independent learning per se, rather it's training with trainers through webinars, much like we're doing today. They are required to challenge several assessments through each week. And then at the end, they're challenging the final exam. And those who are successful, they move on to the operational portion of the assignment, which is where we send out equipment and we get them finally matched with their physician.
Great. So can you share some examples of how virtual scribes contribute to improving the patient care or operational efficiency of a healthcare setting?
Oh, for sure. It's a long list, but I'll try and highlight the bigger points. So this position has adopted well with physicians who are experiencing physician burnout. So, you know, they're spending a number of hours each day seeing patients, and then the administrative work that accompanies seeing those patients takes up a lot of time. Either they do it in between patient visits, but more often than not, that there isn't time available in the day for that administrative work. So a lot of times physicians are spending time in the evenings, or, they might finish their office at 3, but they're at the hospital or in their office until 6 in the doctor's lounge documenting. So having a scribe available to the physician allows for a few things. Most importantly, a more meaningful encounter between the physician and patient. We go to the doctor, we see them for a minute as we exchange, how are you doing? How have you been? Happy New Year. And then typically the physician sits down at their desk at their computer, and we look at the back of their head as they're asking us questions, and they're documenting themselves in the computer. So having someone do that on the back end allows the physician to, speak to the patient more face to face, more meaningful encounter. It allows for real-time documentation. As I said, there's no more of this physician sitting in the doctor's lounge, or at home in their office, or in their office at the hospital. And it also gives the physician back some valuable time in their day, promoting a healthy work-life balance. One thing to mention too is it's real-time documentation. So, there's no more waiting for a report to be dictated, then transcribed, and then processed back to the client. So as soon as the physician sees the patient, the medical record is viewable on the EMR right away. So that's a huge thing too.
Great. So what are some of the key ethical considerations that virtual scribes need to be aware of when working in the healthcare field?
That's a very good question. So they share some of the same ethical considerations that transcriptionists do. Medical scribes are healthcare professionals who work alongside physicians and other healthcare providers to document patient care. They play an important role in the healthcare team, and as such, they have a number of ethical considerations to be aware of. They have to maintain patient privacy and confidentiality. They have to ensure accurate and complete medical documentation. They're respectful and professional at all times. They have to be objective and impartial, avoid conflicts of interest, and report unethical behavior. So they really are essentially a part of the physician's team. And so they would be held to the same, ethical considerations as a physician or anyone else on their team.
How do you ensure that your team stays up to date with the latest medical knowledge and technology advancements?
Well, that's a good question too. AQuity Canada provides ongoing training to our virtual medical scribes. Outside of the training in the Scribing Academy that we talked about, that 3 weeks intensive training, there's training on the electronic medical record that the matched physician uses. Each new trainee is assigned a new hire coach to assist them, who's their primary point of contact through training, to assist them with anything they need. And then, of course, they're working with the trainers that are in the academy daily. So after successfully completing the training in the academy, as I said, each trainee is assigned to specialty trainings, depending on who they're matched with. So that could be cardiology or ophthalmology, any specialty. And we have professional courses such as communication for the scribe in the continuing education department. So outside of the academy, we have this realm of different specialties that the scribe could participate in. We currently have over 30 specialty courses: orthopedics, oncology, neurology, and they can continue to build their curriculum outside of the academy to assist them with the specialty they're working with. They have access to subject matter experts in our academy and ongoing.
Lisa, I'm not sure if you can hear me, but for some reason you have been muted. Is it something maybe at your end?
How long?
There you are.
Okay,
Perfect.
so what did you last hear?
just the last 30 seconds.
Okay.
So
So
yes.
as I was mentioning, in our academy, past the 3-week training, we have some continuing education courses, and there's about 30 different specialty courses that any scribe can participate in. And we also have some subject matter experts that can assist with that. We also have some deep dive courses to augment the specialty training. For instance, if a scribe is assigned to ophthalmology, they could take a glaucoma deep dive course or anything that interests them. So there's always ongoing education within our scribing division.
Oh, that's just excellent. Okay, of great importance to everybody, I think, attending this session. What is the selection process when a applicant comes to you and applies for one of the positions? What is the screening process? What traits are you looking for when you're looking at these candidates?
That's a very good question. I've kind of touched on a few of them, but I will just highlight it. So in order for candidates to apply, we do have a link that we can share with your group. There's initial testing for medical knowledge, so that basic terminology and medical language skill. We have a test that's also be completed at the same time for e-skills that really has a look at English language comprehension, proofreading, logical thinking, following directions, attention to detail, that sort of thing. And then we look at previous medical experience to see, what have they had studies in health, medicine, human anatomy, pathophysiology. And we also have a typing test for the typing speed and accuracy rating. So we look at those initial things first. Once the testing is completed and the applicant is successful, we then move on into the interview process to discuss further qualifications. And we learn a lot through the interview process, the background of the individual, what kind of work they've done. We really know from their testing what their skill level is, but we also want to understand where they're coming from, what makes them a good candidate, and what they have to offer a physician here through AQuity.
Great. Is there a minimum words per minute that you're looking for?
Obviously, the faster you can type, the better. But we do look for 40 words per minute with 98% accuracy. If you type faster, your life is going to be a lot easier. And importantly, that medical language base is important. There isn't time to Google terms as you're providing scribing services for a physician. So we do look for those key elements when we're considering applicants.
Interesting. Okay. Now, let's say the MT or the scribe has been hired and they're working with you nicely. What are the career growth opportunities within your company?
Yeah, we get a lot of questions about that, especially
Sure.
during the interview process. So, we get applicants from a wide range. We have applicants who are internationally trained physicians who now find themselves living and working in Canada, looking for that clinical exposure. We have transcriptionists, we have paramedics, we have nurses, we have individuals who are coming from health sciences undergraduate program, individuals who are graduating from med school, and for whatever reason, they're waiting a year or two for a residency placement. And these individuals are interested in scribing to get that clinical exposure, but there are some people who are looking to advance beyond the scribe position. So within the Scribing Academy, there are many opportunities for growth. When a new scribe enters the academy, they're introduced to all their support staff, which includes trainers, performance coaches, leads, supervisors. So as a scribe, as you work with AQuity and based on performance and length of time with the company, if positions become available in the scribing division, they can certainly apply for those. And they're more administrative. There's some more administrative roles, but some people just want that. They want that continuity of, working with a physician, and supporting them. They find it very interesting.
Great. So a question that we are asked often is,
Mm.
what do you think the impact of technology like AI and automation does to the automation of the transcription? What do you think that does to the virtual scribe role, and how do you think
Yeah,
that that's going to affect the future?
yeah, that comes up a lot because we do have people that transition from transcription into scribing because maybe they haven't had as much transcription work available to them. So this, in terms of AI, it's not going anywhere. In fact, it's growing with technology. And in terms of the virtual scribe role, we don't have a lot of automation right now. Let me just specify there's different roles within the scribing world. We're currently recruiting for the real-time virtual scribe, but there are asynchronous scribes documenting out there where they are documenting from recorded sessions. So eventually, scribing will evolve with some front-end speech capabilities in the future. However, the human element role in supporting a physician is key in this role. So will we see some changes? Absolutely. We can't get away from that. Technology is growing, but physicians are looking for a human element in their um, practice to assist them with documentation.
Good. Okay. Can you share a success story or a particularly rewarding experience involving a virtual scribe from your team?
We have many. So as
Good.
I mentioned, we have applicants who are internationally trained physicians, med grad students, medically trained individuals who are looking to come back into the healthcare workforce, especially after COVID. It affected a lot of positions. And they want to make a difference in healthcare. Medical transcriptionists, again, who are seeking a position that allows them to work directly with a physician and expand their knowledge base. I'll give you one example.
Sure.
We had a medical transcriptionist who worked with us here at AQuity for many years, and she transitioned into the scribe role nicely. She supported a physician for over a year and then decided to apply for a performance coach position in the scribing academy. And what the performance coach does is they, assist with ongoing quality assurance. They really are holding the scribe's hand as they navigate through some difficult situations. And so that person is now supporting new scribes as they come on board to our training program. We have stories of individuals who have graduated med school and now are looking for that clinical exposure. So being able to offer an individual who's fresh out of med school, waiting on a residency rotation, the ability to collaborate directly with a physician, get a head start on documenting, which is going to be a huge part of their job once they become a physician. Those kinds of individuals, we get a lot of feedback that, this is what they want to do. This is what they're seeking. This is what they need on their CV to, really progress. It's very competitive in the, medical field with all of the individuals that are graduating out of med school. They really are seeking this position and are keen to work with a physician to help them advance their skill set as they move on in their career. So we have a lot of, really success stories of individuals who are scribing with us.
Oh, that's great to hear. Okay. Well, Lisa, that was extremely informative. I'm sure that everyone that has attended has found that as well. We've got some questions for you.
Okay.
So if you actually, probably the best way to do it is if you could put your question into the chat, I will read those to Lisa and she can answer them. And we do have somebody attending today that says that you were her manager with AQuity. And
Oh,
I
that's
know
nice.
it is, isn't it? And I know that I was when I started with AQuity, you were too, and I mentioned that to Lisa. Lisa, you've been there how many years?
I'm going into my 24th year.
That's fantastic. Oh, that's really
Thank
good.
you.
That just nothing but nice things have I heard about Lisa. So that's great.
Well, thank you so much. I
Oh, you're
appreciate
very
that.
welcome. Good. Okay. So, first question. Does Acuity have scribes working in Canada now?
We had a pilot program running. Before I answer that question, there's some background to this. So,
Sure.
as I mentioned, the scribes that we provide the physicians we provide scribing services for are US based. Um, we we have very different healthcare systems. So in the States, the hospitals actually are the ones who are paying for scribing services. Here in Canada, the physicians work very differently. So they are, not to say that they're not experiencing the same physician burnout, they certainly are. And it's gotten worse through COVID. But in Canada, the government is not paying, or the hospital's not paying for the scribing services. It comes directly from the physician's pocket. So that has been a big challenge in, kind of getting things rolling in Canada. We fully plan to. In fact, third quarter of 2024, we are on track for getting more pilots going. We have had individual physicians reach out to us. They're not concerned at all about how much it's going to cost them for a scribe because they are suffering, with time management, work-life balance. It's a huge thing having a scribe with them. So in answer to that question, right now, AQuity does not, although there are many scribes working privately, actually not virtually, but perhaps privately in a physician's office, assisting them with scribing services. But our goal is to get scribing up and running in Canada, making it accessible to all physicians.
Oh, that is very interesting. So tell me, if you are a Canadian citizen
Mhm.
and you want to work in the US, let's say you're a snowbird and you want to work in the US, would that be a problem at all?
That's a good question, and we handle that case by case. Mexico, definitely not.
Okay.
If someone's a snowbird and heads to Mexico, that's not a possibility. We do have some scribes who apply to go away for perhaps a couple of months, and we actually have to have approval from the physician, because the understanding is that anyone who's working in Canada is living and sitting within the Canadian border. We are protected through the same privacy and security groups such as HIPAA, FIPA, PIPEDA. So it's very important that we're very discerning about where our scribes are working. And it's contractual too. So, but that being said, the question is a good question. And yes, we do have some scribes successfully working away for 1 or 2 months with permission from the physician that they're working for. But
Yeah,
Mexico and like outside North America, no.
sure. Okay, good. Next question, is training paid
Yes,
when
it
you're
is.
in the
It's paid at our starting rate. Some companies they pay a training rate, which is different. It's lower than the actual starting rate. Here in Canada, we've opted to have the starting rate and the training rate the same. So it is an hourly rate plus benefits.
Excellent. So would you be considered an employee then?
Yes, you are. It's not an independent contractor position. It is a full employee position, um, paid at the hourly rate with benefits. There's extended health care and dental. The benefits are single coverage only, which means they extend only to the scribe. and they are eligible for benefits whether they're working full-time or part-time.
That's really interesting. Okay, the
I
next
see a
question.
question there.
Yes.
When do the benefits
Oh, can
kick
you
in?
see it? Perfect. Okay,
Yeah,
yes, fire
yeah.
away.
So the benefits kick in 6 months after the offer is signed back to AQuity.
Okay, good. So as a scribe, is there any need for a printer?
No.
Okay, good. All right.
We can talk a little
Oh,
bit about the equipment. I can kind of highlight that.
yes, would you please? Yes, thank you.
Sure, absolutely. So we have some technical requirements here. We do have a lot of requirements around personal health information, privacy and security, that sort of thing, but we do have a few technical requirements. One of them is high-speed internet, obviously. So our minimum upload and download requirement is 10 megabits per second. For training, the scribe trainees use their own personal computer for training through a cloud environment, and it must be a Windows operating system. Unfortunately, we're not compatible with Mac, but most people have access to, an older laptop somewhere. So you are required to have your own equipment for training. And then after the training, after the final exam is successfully completed, we ship out an AQuity Scribe computer system to anyone who's going to be working with us. It is a desktop configuration. The Dell unit we send is a small box. It comes with a 24-inch monitor, so there's a large viewing screen so that documentation can be shared with the physician while they're seeing the patient, and also the audio equipment that is used to listen into the encounter between physician and patient. We have some videos available on our AQuity website, just showing high level, a day in the life of a scribe. So those are viewable if anybody would like to review them.
Excellent. Here is a great question. Is the live conversation, like the patient encounter, is it actually recorded so that the scribe could go back and listen to it?
No, it is not. And that's
Okay.
part of the challenge of, having critical listening skills.
Yes.
So no, it's not. And that's part of HIPAA. With the program, we don't allow recordings of the patient physician conversation.
Makes sense. Okay, we talked about working outside of Canada, but working within Canada, can you work in different provinces? For example, we've got a person asking, I live in Alberta and I want to go to BC for 3 weeks. Is that a
That's
problem?
that's perfectly fine. The only thing that is required is we need to have proof. It's usually photo and video coverage of the HIPAA compliant workspace. So you couldn't go to BC and stay in a hotel room and there's no enclosed office space. You have to have a HIPAA compliant workspace.
Makes sense. Good. Okay. Is there any additional exam following the training completion?
There is. There's all kinds of quality reviews, and one of the positions we talked about was performance coaches. So the scribes are, they are undergoing ongoing quality checks. They oftentimes will have a performance coach listening into the encounter with the physician, patient, and scribe, and then checking their documentation afterwards. It's not like you pass the training and you're on your own. There's ongoing communication with the physician that you're providing scribing services for. If there's any issues that come up that way, there's performance management with the coaches. It's just an ongoing educational opportunity. It's really good.
Good. Okay. So my next question is, you've been there 24 years. What's the best part of your job?
The best part of my job is talking to people about what I'm passionate about. It's always been transcription. I feel like, with the transcriptionists that work with us here, I can kind of have a good understanding of what they're going through. Let's face it, transcriptionists are kind of on an island because they're, doing their work. They're they're using their skill set. They're very skilled individuals who happen to be working from home with very little human contact. So providing that and being available to our staff is important. Even though we're a big company, I still feel like we're back to our roots of when I started. It was kind of a family feel, and I feel that continues here. So it's important for me as a healthcare document services manager, working with, we've got thousands of transcriptionists, and right now we have about 800 scribes working with us. Our mandate is to have 1,000 scribes coming on with us each year to meet the needs of our physicians, just to give an idea of scope for everyone who's listening. But the best part of my job is supporting our healthcare providers, supporting the staff who do such a fine job, working with them, and talking to people like yourselves. I like to talk. I don't know if anybody gets that, but I certainly am passionate about what we do here, and I like to share that with people.
And we very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you,
Okay,
Sarah.
next question. Does the doctor approve the final report that's done?
Absolutely, yes.
Good.
The doctor is the final set of eyes on any documentation, and they electronically sign it after they've reviewed it with the scribe.
Great. Okay, so if you live alone, is the enclosed office space necessary?
Yes, it is.
Okay, regardless. All
Yeah.
right. Okay. The additional training you were talking about, for example, the glaucoma deep dive, do I pay for that course, or is it provided by AQuity?
It's provided through AQuity. It's just ongoing learning.
That's great. That's really good. Okay, is there any other questions?
I'm trying to think of some of the questions I get. One of them is always, are there opportunities for advancement? I think I talked about that. I always get questions about equipment. I get questions about what happens. Here's a good one. What happens if I'm unable to take my shift with the physician I'm working with? So, we all have situations at home where we might become ill, or a child becomes ill when we're working from home, and you are not able to dedicate your full attention to the physician. We have a portal in our scribing division where scribes can reach out to other scribes. Scribes are constantly picking up shifts or looking for someone to cover a shift, much like a nurse does in a hospital setting. So they have a portal that they can ask someone to pick up a shift for them. That being said, it is the scribe's responsibility to ensure that if they have a set encounter with a physician, if they have a set shift, they must attend, or they must provide someone to cover that for them.
Okay, interesting. All right. Is there any paid time off or maternity leave?
Yes, there is. And these kinds of things are driven by provincial legislation. So, for instance, in Ontario here, 2 weeks holiday is what you're eligible for the first year of employment. That, of course, is dependent on accrued time. So you couldn't start work and 2 months later take 2 weeks of paid vacation. It's accrued time the first year, but typically you get 2 weeks vacation paid each year.
Good. Okay, we have one student that actually trained with AQuity, but became ill and had to leave. Would it be
Okay,
possible for her to return and apply?
absolutely. Yes.
Great. She's recovered from her illness, so that's good news.
Well, that's
Okay.
very good news.
Yes. Good. Any other questions? Oh, she mentions that she's, oh, hang on. There is some other
She
questions.
still has
Sorry.
the equipment. I saw
Yeah,
that.
that's good.
So that was someone by the name of Jackie, I think. So Jackie,
Jackie, that's
if you
right.
still have equipment, part of the if you went through a termination process, part of that was returning the equipment. And it would have to be returned regardless if you're returning to AQuity or not, just because we have to get it blown out and reloaded again for the next send. So yeah, if you haven't done that, you need to reach out to either myself or Joe Attar. That would have been provided to you in the documentation. And I'm happy to work through that with you if you have some questions.
Excellent. Okay, if I hear a new word that I don't know during the encounter, do I ask the doctor or do I leave a blank and ask the provider about it later? Is there a powwow with the doctor before he or she goes to the next encounter?
That's a very good question. So I'm sure there will be blanks. We've got a video online on our AQuity website, and it basically shows, a physician who has a scribe, and that physician actually interacts with their scribe while they're seeing the patient. Some physicians, they like that they want that kind of model. Some physicians, they don't want their scribes talking during the encounter, and they meet with their scribe in between visits. But with regard to a deficiency in a report, you can't get a word. That is typically highlighted with a blank and then gone over with the physician. As I said, the physician gets the final set of eyes on the document and they have to electronically sign it before it
Good.
goes on the medical record.
Excellent. Are there part-time and casual positions?
There are part-time positions, full-time positions, but not casual. As you can imagine, the physicians that we provide scribing services for, they don't work casually. And just to give an idea to this group, we will talk about part-time versus full-time, but part-time is typically 20 to 25 hours per week. It can go a little bit more than that. Full-time is 40 hours a week. The difference between the two is that part-time, the scribe is offering their full daytime service to a physician for 3 days during a week, Monday through Friday, daytime hours only, no evenings, no weekends. For full-time, it's 5 full days. So as a full-time scribe, if someone's interested in that, you know that you're going to be working an 8+ hour shift, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, anywhere between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. Eastern. Not that you work 12 hours, but that you have availability for an 8 to 9 hour shift in that 12-hour window. Typically, all of our physicians start early, 7 a.m. Eastern. Not that you're actually sitting down with a patient at 7 a.m., but there is some pre-charting activities that need to happen before the physician sits down with the first patient.
Oh, that's very interesting.
The other
Okay.
thing that I wanted to just
Yep.
mention about part-time is I kind of talked about the scope, how many scribes we bring on. So there's probably 100 scribes going into our academy every Monday, just so you have an idea of scope. So in order to match a scribe with a physician, we have a capacity planning team that looks at the scribe's available schedule, what the physician is looking for. So if you're considering part-time, we look for a minimum of 4 days availability. You're not working 4 days, but we have the option of 4 open days to match you with a physician.
Okay. Uh, so you will never, or the scribe will never be working on a weekend or in the evenings, Eastern
Typically,
time
no.
evenings. Okay, good. So yeah, I think that answers your question, Rose. Being on disability, I'm only allowed to work a certain number of hours per week. So I think that was covered
Yeah,
there.
we get that with also study permits. So we have a lot of individuals coming into Canada on study permits, and they're restricted to 20 hours a week, so we can't even consider them. We need to know that, already 8-hour shifts for 3 days is it's 24 hours and usually in excess of that.
Okay,
Plus the
good.
training is 40 hours a week mandatory. So we can't have any restrictions in that regard either.
Okay. The next question was, do you offer any practicum positions with CanScribe students? And I think I can answer that one, not at this time.
Not at this time, no.
Good.
We have in the past with transcription,
Mm-hmm.
and I started that program up a number of years ago to assist with recruiting excellent individuals coming into the transcription side of the business, and it was very successful. What I will say is we don't have a practicum per se, but individuals who have completed the CanScribe Virtual Medical Scribe program, we are cognizant of the fact of the training that they've had, and they typically can forego some of the training in the academy just based on their what they've done through CanScribe.
Good. Okay. What is the starting rate of pay?
That is dependent. We typically say our starting rate is $16 an hour plus benefits, but some provinces, they've really hiked up their minimum wage. So it really is dependent on where the individual lives.
Okay, good. How often do patients refuse to have the scribe in the encounter? And what would the scribe do during that time? Does the encounter get muted?
Well, the actual acceptance of having a scribe in the doctor's office, they have to do even before the patient is seen, they have to sign some release notes that they're aware that there's a scribe listening into the encounter. So that happens prior to AQuity even getting involved with a physician. So that's not something we deal with. But if there was such a situation as that, then and I've not heard of that. Just typically the scribe would not attend that session. But again,
Sure.
that's not something we deal with here.
Sure. Okay. So how far in advance are you given your schedule?
Typically, once the training is completed in the academy and once that final exam, that very important final exam is successfully challenged, that's when we finalize the match, and it can take 2 to 3 weeks to get that done. We were having some challenges, a year or so ago when we weren't as restrictive in what part-time meant to us. Because we had a lot of people say they wanted to work part-time, but their understanding of part-time was Monday through Friday, 8 to noon. We don't have any physicians that are looking for a scribe for those hours. It's a complete 8+ hour shift. So you start when the physician starts, you break when the physician breaks, and you end when the physician ends. So now that we've been more, discerning about talking to individuals about schedules, it's really sped up the process for placement. There is some training on the electronic health record. There's some shadow training with an experienced scribe, which is important before you actually get started with your own physician. So those things happen directly after academy. So there is a bit of a wait time.
Okay, so when you're working with a physician, you're matched up with a physician. I would imagine that you would work the schedule with the physician at that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Okay. So if you wanted to, like, how far in advance would you know your schedule? I don't want to put
The
words in your mouth,
schedule
but
typically does not
yeah,
change week to week.
good. Yes.
So you can count on, for the most part, if the physician starts their first patient at 8 o'clock in the morning and they see patients through to 4:30, you know that you're going to be busy that time. We do know that patients or physicians do run over with patients. And so there may be,
Sure.
times where they're actually working past the 4:30 mark. But typically, the goal is to stay on track. And with documenting, it's less likely physicians are going to get behind.
Okay, good. I think we know the answer to this one. Sorry, I've done something here to our chat. Do you allow breaks to be taken to allow parents to pick up children from school, etc.?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Just like my position, if I'm an employee and I work 9 to 5, I'm not permitted to go get my kids at 2:30.
Mhm.
So if you're taking on this responsibility, A lot of transcriptionists, they choose that line of work because they have the flexibility as an independent contractor. As an employee, you're dedicating yourself to the schedule that's set. So no, unfortunately, there isn't time to go pick up your children on a school run.
Okay. If someone starts part-time, can they transition into full-time later?
Yes, they can. And that's a question we get a lot. The one thing I will say about that is we get individuals starting with us part-time with the understanding that let's see how it goes, see if it's a good fit for me. My typical response during an interview process is this is not a trial run. It is a full-time or part-time position. You are dedicated to keeping the schedule. However, we do have situations where people transition from full-time to part-time or from part-time to full-time. We allow that once per calendar year. And the reason behind that is it takes a lot to organize the match between a physician and patient. Again, or sorry, physician and scribe. And again, the match is based on availability. So through our capacity planning group, they're spending a lot of time looking at many variables to match a physician with a scribe. And so if we hire someone full-time and they get organized with that full-time physician, they start to work, and then now they want to do part-time, we're back to the drawing board. They're no longer able to service with that physician. They have to now go back to capacity planning and find a part-time physician that's going to match up with the schedule they have to offer. So yes, it can be done, but we go into this with the understanding that it's not a trial run. If you're committing to full-time, please commit to full-time. If you're committing to part-time, please commit to part-time.
Good. Okay, we just have time for a couple more questions.
Okay.
We have a good question here. When does the hiring process begin? Do you recommend that our students graduate first before applying, or as they get to the end of the course? Is it worthwhile for them to get their resume in? When is the best timing?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would say that we won't consider an application until we have a successful transcript in hand. So that means if you've done transcription, we need the practicum portion and the final transcript. And if you've done a virtual scribing position, the same thing. We need a successful transcript in hand from the accredited college.
Okay, good to know. Last question. We talked about transitioning from a scribe or from an MT to a scribe.
Mm-hmm.
How about the other way? How about transitioning from a scribe to an MT?
Works the same way. I mean, I think that when you get down to the nitty gritty, a transcriptionist and a scribe have the same medical language knowledge that we're looking for the virtual medical scribe position. The only thing that maybe a scribe has more experience with is working directly with the physician. But we actually have individuals who have been transcribing with us for a long time. They've moved into the scribing role, but they've also maintained transcription as part of their day. Or they just want to transcribe evenings and weekends. That to me is a big workload, especially for someone who's new getting started. But I think between scribe and MT and vice versa, the transition is not too much to handle. I think that it can kind of be seamless as long as the training has been taken care of on the scribe side.
Oh, that's good news. And it's really exciting when you mentioned that you're hiring or aim to hire 1,000 virtual scribes a year. That
Yeah,
really is a huge volume and very nice for our graduating students. Well,
absolutely.
that brings us to the end. Lisa, thank you so much. I found that extremely informative. I hope that everybody else did. I'm sure that they did. We are familiar with AQuity, and if anyone wants to apply, or can they reach out with any questions if they have specific questions about AQuity? Can they reach out to AQuity?
Yes, of course you can.
Yeah.
So in terms of viewing the initial high-level documentation, they can go to the AQuity website and just click on the scribing. There's an icon for scribing. There's some videos that are available there, which I would encourage everyone to use. There's even some information about the hiring link in there. So yeah, definitely there's all kinds of support for anyone who's looking for information on the virtual medical scribe position.
Excellent. Oh, that's very good. Well, you're getting a lot of thank yous, and that this was very informative. So, Lisa, your time with us today was great. Thank you again
Well,
for
thank
joining
you so
us.
much to everybody. And for those of you who are considering the scribing role as part of, a change in your career, it's definitely the way to go. As I said, I've come from a background in transcription, and when we started with the scribing role, I thought, gee, I wish this was available when I was working from home as a transcriptionist, because a lot of people who go into transcription, perhaps at some point they did service a physician in a healthcare office. So, they were working almost as a medical office assistant, but, just taking on this additional responsibility of documenting, which is great. We provide training on. So, it's just helping you to take that stepping stone to advance a healthcare admin position, really.
Excellent. Well, I see we have one student who is actually in the process of being in the hiring process, and she's
Excellent.
finished her assessments with you on Friday. So good
Good.
luck to you. I know the student. I think she'd be a great scribe, but yeah, very, very good.
Well, that's very
Oh,
exciting, and we get very excited to see CanScribe individuals come. This group is probably aware that, CanScribe offers transcription programs. They also offer a virtual medical scribing position, which is relatively new. And CanScribe and AQuity worked pretty closely together to, look at the course content for what the scribe is going to be learning. So it's very exciting for us to see people come from that path and see them transition into AQuity and working with a physician. That's our goal here. So I
excellent.
appreciate everyone's time today. It was a pleasure working with you, Sarah. Thanks for having me. And
My
again,
pleasure.
I'm here if there's any questions that come up.
Excellent. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Well, thank you. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.